and this is the third session for Battle Apps. Thanks for coming in. Again, like the previous sessions, they're all going to be available online, and you can download the video or look at the video online and check things out. So I'm going to get right into it. We're going to talk about prototyping, and we're going to talk a little bit about how to design that and using mock-ups. So that's the agenda for the morning. I'm just going to share one of my screens here. And we're going to talk a little bit about designing prototypes. There we go. So a little bit about designing prototypes in general, and specifically we'll get into putting together your prototypes with mock-ups a little bit. There's already a video online, and if you check out the team site, you'll be able to see that. So without further ado, so developing prototypes. Why do you want to develop a prototype? Basically because it's easier than developing your finished product right from the start. It's a low time investment, a low cost investment, or it should be a low cost investment. And you're using this process to test ideas, not to build a complete product. What you want to do is be able to use your prototype to communicate value to what potentially will be your end user or your investor. Specifics, you want to use it to test specific ideas. In that vein, you may make several prototypes. So you probably will make several prototypes. And don't think that you can test everything or a whole product all at once. Make sure that when you're designing your prototype, you're not sort of testing everything in the kitchen sink. Again, should be a low cost and a low time investment. So I like this. This is Newman's design squiggle. I saw this a couple of years ago, and I thought it was really clever. It's used quite often to sort of illustrate the design process. So you see at the left, we've got this squiggle. Okay, that's your research. That's your uncertainty phase. That's where you're looking to test your ideas and come up with your concepts. And as things become more clear, you define your main concept or your main problem, you gain clarity, and then you can start to design things. The point being that you should be able to test and think about all kinds of different models, all kinds of different assumptions, and experiment and come up with all kinds of creative ideas and solutions. The second part of this, I should say, I like the squiggle so much that I sort of applied it to a few other things. So the design squiggle applied to learning, for example. And I think I'm actually missing part of the bottom of this. So I'm going to just escape that. There we go. And you can still see it, I think. I just want to be able to see the bottom. So the design squiggle applied to learning. You begin a process where you don't even really know what you don't know at the start, and you go through a lot of thought, a lot of testing ideas and testing assumptions, and finally you get to the point where you've done enough research, okay, that you realize that you don't really know very much about the subject you even started with. Okay, you got enough of the lay of the land, you got the broad strokes, that you get to the point where you finally understand that I don't really know much. And then that's when you're open enough to start learning. Okay, at the beginning you have a level of certainty, and at the end you pass through to the point where, well, maybe I don't know as much as I thought I did. The design squiggle applied to the business model. Okay, discover, validate, scale. Okay, discover, learn. Okay, test assumptions, validate what you're working on, and then once you know what you have works, then you can scale. And finally, design squiggle applies to design for delight. There's this design for delight idea where you go wide and then you get narrow. Okay, you ideate. Okay, they have a process, something called follow me home. So basically that's where you're doing research and getting very specific with your end user. And then you finally can really start to do some real design to meet that person's need. So I think I can probably go back to the full screen there now. Oh, there we go. We got that back. I don't know why it disappeared before. So ideation. Lots of ideas, and I've got little colored squares here because I think sticky notes are a great tool. Using sticky notes to just put single ideas and concepts down and have a board where you can put things up and you can come up with all kinds of different options. And then as you go through the process, you narrow that down to get to the point where you've got high confidence in what you're working on. Okay. So again, sort of another iteration or another way of looking at that design squiggle idea. So in prototyping, there's different kinds of prototypes: low fidelity, medium fidelity, high fidelity. So we're going to look at a couple of those ideas. Again, the low fidelity prototype is made to be quick and cheap and easy. It's supposed to be poorly made. It's not supposed to stand up to rigorous abuse. You want to test things like, well, what's it going to look like? Okay, what if I tried this? What if I moved a button over here? What if I put a handle on something? What if I made this device a little thicker or thinner or shorter? So the whole point is to sort of 3D conceptualize your idea with a low fidelity, low cost device. In the real world or the physical world, you use stuff like Lego blocks and popsicle sticks and modeling clay and cardboard and scissors and glue and pens. So you're physically sort of putting something together that gives you maybe something you can look at or something tangible at a very low cost devices, low cost items. In app prototyping, it's probably even easier because basically you draw things out. Okay, you start with the screen you're going to be using, usually a phone or a tablet, most often a phone. And then you simply draw out your ideas. So in the workbook, I gave everyone a copy, a sheet, okay, of a phone template. You can photocopy that, print that off. And we're going to be looking specifically at mock-ups as sort of a platform that we're going to use for helping you to wireframe out your ideas. This illustration here is from thinklions.com. They have, in fact, there's all kinds of resources online, all kinds of things that you can use to sort of guide you in coming up with, well, what does the process look like? What are some examples? So I don't need to belabor that. You've all got Google. You can all search those things. And then you go through a process, medium fidelity prototyping. So it's slightly more refined. You probably spent a little more money on it. You're going to be able to demonstrate how the device idea works a little more effectively and maybe start to test combined functions together. And high fidelity prototyping, you might call this a beta in the software world or an alpha maybe. And you're looking at a more complete design or product or piece of software. And you use this for testing. You're not at the stage where you're going to be putting it out in the public at this point. You're probably going to be doing internal testing. And in the financial world, you might be showing this to investors to get interest in what you're doing. Okay. Some prototype fallacies. Here's where some people get a little bit hung up. Overzealous belief. So you've got an idea, and because you've thought of this idea, it's obviously amazing. Now, could be great. Okay, I call it getting married to your idea. It's this commitment to this idea, and it is the only thing, the only future option that can happen. Okay, and that's natural. People fall into that, but it is a bit of a trap. You have to understand your own biases and be able to understand when maybe you're not looking at the complete picture because you've gotten married to your original idea. Not invented here. So someone comes to you with a suggestion or a question, okay? And simply because it's not part of your original mindset, your internal model of how you think this should work, you don't want any part of it. Okay, you're not open to suggestions. You're not open to other questions. They call that not invented here. Sunk cost fallacy. You sometimes get so far down the path that you say, oh, I've come this far, I may as well finish it. Okay, now there is something to be said for stick-to-itiveness. But sunk cost fallacy is something that can basically just, in many cases, waste time and waste money. It's a classic fallacy of gamblers in Las Vegas. You've put so much money into one of the machines. The next pull of that lever on that slot machine is going to be the one. I put enough money into this that the next one is going to be the one that's going to succeed or get me the money. And of course, that's not the way slot machines work, and that's not the way life works. Bike shedding. Bike shedding is a process where, and it's called bike shedding because it's used in reference to a story. You need to picture a committee that comes together to build the world's biggest nuclear power plant. Massive, complex, all kinds of money, thousands of people working on it. And this committee gets together and they start arguing over the staff bike shed, where the staff is going to park their bicycles. Okay? Multi-million-dollar facility, and everyone focuses on the smallest, easiest problem, rather than, approaching the difficult things first. Falling in love, I've mentioned that. It's akin to overzealous belief. And also a need to make it perfect. If you're doing prototypes, it's not supposed to be perfect. And even as you get through the process where you get to release software or whatnot, software in particular, I mean, it's really intended to be upgraded and changed and grow as time goes by. So sometimes it's more profitable or more it's more successful to get something out the door rather than holding on to it until it's absolutely perfect. So in developing prototypes, they say that you should embrace discomfort. Okay? Now, I mean, what that means is that you should be trying new things. You should be trying daring things, dangerous things. Maybe not dangerous, but trying things that aren't necessarily within your regular, your regular box, your regular line of thought. Fail often, but fail small. If you're not failing, you're not really trying something unique. In the world of entrepreneurship, in the world of design, you have to become comfortable with the not just possibility, but the eventuality. You will try things that won't work. Okay, Thomas Edison once said that. I think it was Thomas Edison trying to invent the light bulb, and he had yet to succeed. And he said he hadn't failed; he just found 10,000 ways that didn't work. So becoming comfortable with that, but making sure that your failures are small. Fail in small ways along the path to discovery. Okay. When a car manufacturer develops a new car, they don't design the engine, design the frame, design the interior, put the body on it, paint it, slap license plates on it, and then stick it out on the road to sell. Or most of them shouldn't. Maybe that might have happened in the past. But along the way, they test the small things along the way. Well, if they make this change to the engine, what is the effect of that? If they design the frame or the body in a different way, what's the effect? They'll find ways that succeed. They'll find ways that fail. And little by little, with the small steps, they'll eventually get to the end goal. Welcome questions. And the last thing I'll say in this slide here, experts built the Titanic. I love that. Experts built the Titanic. A lot of the greatest innovations come from people that really are not what you would call experts in any one given field. Prototyping, again, some wisdom. Consult early, consult often, and avoid not invented here. If you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, you've launched too late. Okay? Again, striving for perfection, define perfection. Okay, is it perfect in your eyes? Is it perfect in your customer's eyes? Get things out the door into people's hands, okay, and get real world feedback. So I want to talk a little bit about pretotypes, and not a prototype, a pretotype. And this is, I guess, mostly applicable to software, maybe more so than physical objects, but it's a phrase coined by a former engineering director at Google, Alberto Savoy, I think. A pretotype is a stripped down version of a product. It's used merely to validate interest. Okay? So a pretotype would, for example, be a facade for an online store, gauging customers' interest in products that you may not have even sourced yet, or you may not have finalized yet. Okay, a prototype might be, in the course of a restaurant, might be, you know, some sample or test meals that you have that are testing and validating customer interest. Okay, so prototypes come before prototypes, and they're used to validate a market rather than create a product. You're finding out if someone wants your device or your application or your product before you really spend much time designing a prototype. So it's after you think that you have a product that people might be interested in that you can get into the prototype phase. And that's where you physically might start to build or design or engineer or draw something. And then we get another phrase called the minimum value proposition, MVP. You might hear that phrase. So an MVP is like that first version of your software. It's like version 1.0 of Microsoft Windows. I don't know if many people are familiar with the story, but almost nobody used Windows before 3.1. 3.1 and 3.11. Version 1 of Windows was awful. Version 2 of Windows was only moderately less awful. Version 3 was buggy as hell. 3.1 was moderately usable. 3.11 fixed more bugs. So that minimum value proposition, getting something in the hands of users that can test it and give you more feedback and then guide further development, your MVP just needs to be usable. Okay? Maybe not a commercially sellable product completely. It might be for, say, a limited test audience, but it gets your basic application or idea into actual customers' hands. Prototypes, Zappos. Zappos is a shoe store, and they're known for having started a store with no inventory. All they had was a web page and a 3-minute video. It gave the founders high quality feedback about the kind of products that they should be offering. When you do that, you do have to be careful that you're not putting yourself in any kind of jeopardy of being accused of false advertising or overselling your expectation. Software developers will use the term beta. Oh, we're going to do a beta release. Well, when you throw the word beta release on it, everyone expects there to be problems. That's what beta releases are for. Okay, so those are examples of, like, MVP and prototypes and prototypes. The use of social media and web pages in order to gauge interest. That's another way to sort of test purchaser intent. Okay, you could put something on a Facebook page, or you could launch put a video out there and ask for user comments or feedback in order to test a market and see if there's value there, if there's going to be uptake. Crowdfunding is popular, Kickstarter campaigns. So you come up with an idea, you might have a small prototype at the side or some design sketches, and you go out into the market and you test it. How many people would actually be willing to put down money if you fulfilled this product plan? Okay, so you can test that market, test who wants it, and in fact also maybe get some funds or know that there's some money at the end of the road for when you actually, you know, complete the product and design. Another quote, you'll uncover the product you're supposed to make by prototyping the one you thought you should make. And my final slide, I think I've shown this before. I probably show this in a lot of presentations. This is the email from the founders of Airbnb. And I love that first line. I thought of a way to make a few bucks. Okay. These are, you know, two guys who thought of a way to make a few bucks. They were not programmers, they were not developers, but they had an idea. And 10, 12, 14 years later, Airbnb is a multi-billion-dollar company, and you know, their founders are doing quite well. So we'll come back live for a few minutes, and we're going to talk a little bit about wireframing. Before I do, are there any questions online or in the room here about prototyping? No? Online? Okay. I'm going to again switch to share my screen just to show, whoops, I don't want to do that. Okay. So I'm going to look at mock-ups. And again, this is free for everyone to use. You can go to the online to mockups.com. And this is like a drawing illustration software, fully online. All you need to do is log in, make an account, and you can make drawings and illustrations and flowcharts for free, up to 400 objects per project. And like I said, I've got some initial videos online on how to. I've got a flowchart video online for how to make a quick flowchart, and I've got an initial wireframing video online. You can find those on the Teams site, and I'm going to go into this in just a little more detail here now live. So, basically, you got a menu on the side that gives you some of your main features. There's a little plus sign there that you can use to make a new project. And you've got stencils, pages, outlines. So when I go to look at pages, for example, I've got my wireframe document there. There's another flowchart diagram in here. We looked at that the other day. And you can modify those and you can flowchart your idea. So just a few more wireframing options and sort of ideas for putting together sort of tests and prototypes. I'm just going to take this actually and throw this off to the side. Again, we can resize our page just by putting your cursor on the corner or the side and make things as big as you like. And I'm going to go to the stencils option. So there's a bunch of different things there, a bunch of different categories, flowchart diagrams, spec tools. I'm going to go to devices. Maybe we'll pull out a Google Pixel 3 this time. There we go. Got all kinds of options there. And it's got a thing for iOS components. Okay, so maybe look inside there and you can see, there's keyboards. I know this is don't want to upgrade just yet. Okay, it may not quite fit because it's sort of an Apple keyboard, but that's all right. We'll zoom in on that a little bit. And you can scale your keyboard. Now, when you scale things, grab it by the corner and hold the Shift key in, and it'll constrain it to the same proportion. So we'll just scale that in there and say throw a keyboard. I can arrow key things down and up. I can hold the Shift key in to move it a little further. So maybe I'll put it down there like that. And I might say, well, that's sort of the corners aren't quite matching. You can arrange things in layers as well. So, I'll click on the keyboard, I'll right click on it, and I'll go to arrange, send to back. And now it kind of little corners are wrapped in, just looks a little bit nicer. So you can drag out items, and there's all kinds of different stock items in there that you can use. You might want to switch. Some apps have switches on them. An app might have a taskbar of some sort. Let's see. There's an iOS status bar. We'll throw that up there. So, and again, you can scale things to your liking. Do that. Yeah, and you can design your screen. What else is in there? There's some of those are multiple groups. There's like taskbar icons. I think I showed this in the diagram the other day. So these are all grouped together. I'm going to right click on that group of items and I'm going to say ungroup. And there somewhere is ungroup. There we are, ungroup selection. Okay, so now I can pick them individually and I can throw them in my. Okay. Now you'll see that as I drag those out down here, my free plan, 288 of 400 objects down the bottom left corner. If I select those and delete them, it frees up some space. Click on this, frees up some space. Now you might say, why do I have 237 characters? Well, this keyboard is actually a group. If I click on it twice, and let me just zoom in there a little bit, you'll see that what I've got is actually separate items. So I've got the key itself, and I've got the letter. Okay. So a keyboard takes up a lot of items. That's fine. That's the way they're built. That's the way the software works. Just be aware if you're sort of running out of space that, maybe pulling out the keyboard itself might not be necessary. You can maybe pull out a box that represents the keyboard if you're running out of spaces. In wireframing, what you often do, and maybe what I'll do is I'll take that keyboard out of there, and maybe I'll just put a box in there of some sort. So maybe I'll draw a rectangle. Up the top, we have some tools there, so I can diagram, I can pencil, draw ellipse. So I'm just going to draw a rectangle, and we'll say that's my keyboard. And I can change the color of that. Maybe I want the text to be different, or the box to be different, line color to be red. Maybe the background I want to be yellow. Okay, so there's these drawing tools are like most drawing tools that you'd find online. So maybe I want to take that, and that's but one of my items. I want to maybe duplicate that because I've got another screen, and maybe I'll just paste it one more time. Okay, I'll drop that down there. Maybe I want to resize my page to fit what I'm doing. That's fine. So I can now sort of wireframe these illustrations. I can go up to my menu at the top there with my drawing tools, and I can choose the diagram option. So you can see when I choose the diagram option that I've got these nodes that are all around my diagram. So maybe what I want to do is sort of pull out a node that connects those two spots. Okay, and maybe this node I can pull out and it goes back to the other side. Okay. So I can sort of draw some lines and illustrations to show the flow of my application. The next menu item, I've got like sticky notes and callouts and brackets. So say I want to put an annotation bracket in there. So there's my annotation bracket. So I could say, well, grab that out and I'll say, blue color. I probably spent color wrong, but that's all right. And I can change the size of that. Yeah, I put a T on the end of it. Okay. So I can annotate things. I can sort of, point that down to there. Pull my box over, and I can add annotations. I can add sticky notes, where I get a little note that this is the first prototype. Okay. And again, you can annotate things and draw lines. So you've got some tools there for drawing, adding text. You've got some tools, to sort of mark up your diagram and give some further explanation. Okay. And again, like most software, like when you select an item, you've got controls that appear on the right side for your standard stuff, your text, your alignment, your colors, those kinds of things. So I encourage you to play around, try the different options and models and graphics, and sort of use it to mock up and create your diagram for your illustration. So stop sharing that screen. And are there any questions on what I've shown you in mockups? There's two other videos online, so you can join the Teams site and have a look at those as well. And this session will be recorded and is online as well, so we'll have that online. Any questions? Good. Anyone online? Everyone all right?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay. So one last thing I want to look at. is, let me see if I have it up here. One last thing I want to look at. So I want to look at Kijiji. Go. I want to look at Kijiji. So I'm going to go share my screen again. Okay. So this is a PDF document I put together, and I think I put that up on the site as well. So all the things I'm referencing here, you can reference and look at online later. So this is an example of a wireframe of the website, the app, I should say, for Kijiji. A simple wireframe. I'm not necessarily expecting, well, I'm not expecting anything more than this for sure. Now I've used screenshots in this case because Kijiji exists. So I basically went through the application and I screenshotted my phone, and I annotated and copied and flow charted, you know, the flow for how this application works. In this case, I have it in a PDF document and it scrolls downward. Okay. Basically what we have is, you know, a login screen, maybe setting up a password or signing in or forgot password options, illustrated off of the top. Maybe I'll just zoom into that a little bit. Just so we can kind of see the screens. So, you know, the main login screen, which leads you to a home screen. The home screen is, in many cases where an app is sort of your base, your anchor for where most things come off, split off. Now, there's a number of different options here, and I haven't drawn in every item for space. Again, you may not necessarily, you may not have a completely annotated idea of your wireframe, but this gets the main flow, or gets the idea of the main flow across. So we've got the home screen. We've got your 5 main sections off the bottom. There also is like a favorite item in here, and then a browse by category. So search at the top, little graphic, hello, some favorite stuff up here. We haven't actually annotated that, but you could annotate that and say what it is. So the 5 main buttons on the bottom come off to the 5 main categories. So we have search, chat, post, listings, and profile. So each of the screens lays out slightly differently. Chat as a search actually looks a lot like home, but that's just the way that works. I think I mentioned before that, in fact, they just changed this app last week. Every time they change it, I think it gets worse. I don't know who's designing it, but I seem to like each version less and less and less. So maybe it's just familiarity. This outlines your main features. You can chat with people that you're sending notices to about buying their stuff. You can search through categories. You can add your own listings. And you have a profile screen. Okay. So some of these screens are more detailed, and I'll go back to the left in a minute there, but you know, the search screen, as you start to type something in, it comes up with suggestions. And if you pick a suggestion, it comes up with the list of the items. Okay. Now, again, just for space here, I thought about drawing a line from here to here, but basically when you select something from the search results, you can click on and get the individual item. Okay, we'll talk more about that in a sec. The chat feature. Okay, you have a list of your chat items, and you click on a chat item, and you've got the conversation with, you know, the person that you're talking to. You've got your posting. You pick a category, and then it goes into your item screen. I set up here to sell a coffee cup online. And as you go through, there would be more screens here. I'm simplifying this, but effectively you would add your photo, add your title. As you scroll through, there's other things there like the price and the cost and everything like that. Your listing screen, I have no listings here right now, but if it did, you would click on a listing and it would come back, you know, to something like that. And your profile. Okay, in this case, the profile, you have your picture, you have your information, you can edit your information, and of course there will be a little more detail on that, but this gets our main features underway. On the left, I mentioned that we have the option to sort of browse by category. So when you click browse by category, you get an option. Which category are you browsing? Did you click buy and sell, or did you click car and vehicles? Because up here you can see we've got buy and sell, cars and vehicles, real estate, jobs. So it's when you hit that, you pre-selected, or you've selected a path to go down. Okay, well, what kind of buy and sell item do I have? Is it a book or a bicycle or baby items? If I hit car and vehicle, is it a truck? Is it a motorcycle? Is it a boat? So you can pick your option. Okay, well, I want to look for motorcycles. Well, is that a sport bike or a touring bike or a dirt bike? And then, of course, down to your list. Okay, those are the street bikes. You click an item and you get your final item detail. Okay. Off to the side, you have settings. And quite honestly, I couldn't find the filter on the new application yet. It used to be a little hamburgery kind of item up on the top. But when you do get the settings, you can specify the geographic area that you want to search in. And of course, other options as well. It's got, what price range are you looking at, or is there a year or a model that you're looking for? In this case here, when you pick an area, it gives you a nice little, a cute little map thing where you can say, well, what's the radius of the search that I want to find items within? The app wouldn't be very helpful if what you were looking for came up clogged with listings from Alberta and Saskatchewan and Ontario. If you can't, you don't tend to travel there to get those items. So, so this is a sample wireframe. Okay, now with screenshots, you're not intended to have screenshots because you're going to hopefully draw some of these things out either by hand or with mock-ups as a wireframe. Most of these items are in fact like preset graphics you can drop out in something like mock-ups. So it looks like a lot, but when you really get down to it, it's not that much because you're really looking at mostly text descriptions of the items that will be there in the features, okay? But your graph will potentially look something like this with the addition of some annotations and descriptions, okay? So when you're filling out your workbook, again, I've asked you to be, concise and short and brief in your descriptions. You'll include the link to your wireframe mockup, and you'll also include, there's an area there for features, like main features. Okay, so for example, in my application here, if I would be listing my main features, I would be looking at, search, chat, post, listings. Those are my main features. Okay, I might have a favorites option in there. Okay, but these would be the items that you would illustrate, out, you would include in your feature set in your workbook, and then include a bit of a longer description too. Okay, so I want you to really think about the feature set, think about how they connect. Don't worry so much about long descriptions of how they work. As they say, like a picture is worth 1,000 words. So by the time you give your app a name, a short description, and then wireframe out some boxes and some flow, you've pretty much accomplished the task you need to do for completion, of this assignment. Okay. So that's what I have for today. Kind of kept it mercifully short today, about 40 minutes so far. Are there any questions about what I've gone over today, the workbook, or anything else in relation to? You're good? Everyone's good there? Okay. Online? Everyone's good? Tushar, are you all set for graduation?
Okay.
Hi,
Yes,
Abigail?
yes, I am all set for graduation.
Okay, good. Okay, if there's no other questions, I'll let you go. I know some of you are preparing for graduation, either I think today or tomorrow. Congratulations to everyone and good luck. And if you have any questions, again, todd_graham@cbu.ca. Please feel free to email me with any questions, and I'll be placing the video for this online with the other recordings, and you can kind of check in on them at any time. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.